Hello. Welcome back to English 112. We have a lot to do this week. We're kind of picking up the pace a little bit now that you have the first paper assignment for this semester. So I'm going to try to keep this video short, which is a challenge for me, so you can get right to work because I've set up some challenges for you for this week. So let's get to it. The first thing I want to say is good for you for showing up, getting your work in. Like I said, just showing up is half the battle. It's the hardest thing to do. So you're here, you're focused. Let's go. If you haven't yet, I want you to open up the paper 1 assignment folder. You'll see it pretty near the top of this folder's list of items. Take a look at that. I assume you have at least opened the paper 1 assignment, right? Just to see what the heck I'm asking you to do for this first big assignment. This week we're in the second phase of the writing process that I kind of briefly sketch out early in the assignment. So this is the part where we're focusing on what they say, right? What the kind of literary experts and scholars have said about whatever story that you've chosen to write on of the 5 stories that I'm asking you to consider and to write about one. So you're in the collection process, right? I know, because I've been reading your homework from this that you just turned in recently, I know you've got your own opinion about the meaning of the story, the theme, the conflicts, the characters. And that's great. Now is the really important step of putting your ideas in the context of this larger conversation that's been going on, that people have been having over the decades about whatever story you're writing about. Take a look at the assignment sheet. If you haven't read through it completely, please do that. I also encourage you to go ahead and look at the example essays that were written the last time I taught this class. I put in a couple papers as an example, papers that earned A's. So I thought, in my opinion, they were really successful. And you can kind of see how other students have put together this kind of they say, I say format, right? Where you're taking your ideas, your explanation of the story's meaning, and also putting it in the larger context of this scholarly discussion, and contributing to the discussion, right? That's the whole point. And so I ask you to take a look at that. We've got a couple readings out of this book, and I've talked to a couple people this last week about this book, because some of y'all have different editions. Like literally you have covers that don't look like this, because this is a relatively new edition. You might have an older edition of this, or you may have a they say, I say something else, like they say, I say with readings, or that isn't specific to the Wake Tech program, because this has specific things for Wake Tech students in it from our English department. Look, if that's the case, if for whatever reason you ended up with an edition that's not this one, we can work around that probably, right? Especially if it's just like the earlier edition of this exact book. Then you have the readings probably mostly in there. The page numbers will be different, right? So you might have to look at the table of contents to find out, or just shoot me an email and I can tell you where it's at. If it's a whole different book, right, and a couple of you've got that, then the workaround's a little more complicated. One thing you can do is reach out to the Wake Tech library and just ask them to send you specific chapters that you might not have in your book that I'm asking us to read from the required text. And they can help you out to a certain degree, right? Like, I don't think you can go the whole semester asking them to send you PDF files of whole chapters, because at some point they have to be careful of copyright laws. But again, we'll figure out some workarounds for that. But let me know if that's an issue. Okay, one thing I wanted to just remind you of, one of the early links, maybe the first link in this week's folder, is of this wonderful poet, Amanda Gorman. And I want you to open that link and watch that TED talk, that TED presentation. Um, you won't be quizzed on it. You won't have to write anything about it. I just want you to watch it and 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 nothing. That's it. Just watch it. She's the poet who gave a poem at the who presented a poem at the inauguration that happened just recently, and I thought she was the highlight of the whole thing. And I think this presentation she gave uh, for a TED conference is even better than the things she wrote about. And I think it does connect back to an earlier question that we were all discussing about the role of literature in society, right? Does poetry matter? Does literature change anything other than just providing individual people with entertainment or information or knowledge or whatever? And I think her answer is clearly, heck yes, it does. And after watching her perform a couple times, I am kind of in agreement with her, but I was an easy audience for her, right? As most English teachers and professors are. Anyway, take a couple minutes, treat yourself to that. It's worth your attention. Another couple links are to the Real Center and the Individual Learning Center, and I'm going to just keep putting those links in every week's folder from now until the final draft of this first paper is due, simply because one of the best ways to improve your writing is to get feedback on the writing you're doing all the way through the writing process. Certainly I can give you some feedback. I'll be, when I'm posting grades on the various journals that you're turning in these weeks, I'll put a little bit of feedback. Sometimes it's just like thumbs up, keep doing what you're doing. Sometimes it'll be a little more detailed if I kind of want to encourage you to go a different way or add more information or whatever. But I'm working with like 100 students every week, and it's really hard for me to give detailed feedback. The thing that the Real Center and the ILC can do is give you much more of a one-on-one experience, and you can get feedback from writing specialists. And especially with the Real Center, because that's specifically set up only for students that are working on papers for English classes, and it's only staffed by English professors. So it's people that are teaching English 112 right now or have taught it in the past, and they know exactly what the standards are for writing a successful paper, right? And they've got a lot of tips and a lot of wisdom. You've already paid for all of these services. So in essence, it's a free service. It just takes a little bit of time and effort on your part to submit your rough draft or your outline or your introduction or whatever part of the paper you're on. I encourage you to use it early and often and not wait, for 2 days before the final draft is due and submit it and hope that they'll edit your paper for you, because we can't really do that. We can give you some feedback and some suggestions if there's a pattern of error, certain kind of error, but it's not really, neither place, the Real Center or the Individualized Learning Center, neither place is like an editing service for you, but you can get some feedback. So I encourage you to look into that if you haven't used that before. It's a great service, and I can always tell. I mean, that there's tangible improvement on papers when the authors of those papers use those free services. So I hope you do. I've got a couple readings I'm asking you to do from this. One is the final one of the short stories I'm asking you to read through and think about, and it's Battle Royal, which is the first chapter or an early chapter of the famous novel Invisible Man, Ralph Ellison's masterpiece that he wrote back in the early 1950s. But it still is relevant today. It's not an easy read. It's pretty disturbing. And in fact, there's some language in there that is really unpleasant to read. So I put a little notice of, if you just don't want to read racist language, I kind of mark out in the warning where the part of the story you can just skip. So that's totally up to you. There's a reason that Ralph Ellison put it in there, right? Put that language in there. Because really what the story is about is one young African-American man's struggle to not be the invisible man, right? To not be kind of socially invisible, to have no acknowledged identity and humanity, right? He's growing up in a system. I mean, this is the 1950s in the South. Although I guess it's actually, what it's depicting is something that happened even earlier in the 20th century, right? Because the novel is of an older man looking back at when he was younger. So this is a high school guy going through this event where he begins to realize that this white patriarchal system that he's having to navigate and negotiate is denying him his humanity, right? Is not recognizing him, is blind to him as a full human being, right? And that's kind of something that Amanda Gorman, the poet, speaking to us in 2021, she's still saying that. She's still reminding us of what Ralph Ellison was writing about 70 years ago, which is really both sad but also kind of profound. Anyway, I encourage you to read the story, right, the chapter, and also to watch the crash course video right after that, or you could watch, it might make more sense to watch the video before you read the story, because in that, John Green, the great writer, basically kind of explains the novel, the whole novel. But within that, and you don't even have to watch the whole part if you just wanted to watch the first part, because it's the most relevant to us. He talks about Ralph Ellison's life and a little bit about the bigger picture, cultural picture of why that novel is so important, and why the beginning of the novel, how it fits, how our chapter fits into the larger novel. Anyway, if you have any questions about that, shoot me an email. Hit me up on our team site. That would be great. Then we're shifting gears to working on the paper, to jiving into the scholarly conversation. So I'm going to be asking you to use the library's electronic databases, right? And there's a whole bunch of stuff, basically breaking down what a scholarly journal is and how to quickly read through it, and also how to kind of navigate Waketext databases. If you haven't used them in an earlier class, this is the class to do it. And once you do it the first time, it's super simple. It's in some ways much more effective use of your time than just putting the title of a story or a subject in Google and seeing what happens, right? Because what it does is it's a much more focused search, and you know that the product of that search are going to be legitimate, authentic, scholarly sources that are acceptable to use in the papers that you have to write in college classes. So it's you don't have to worry, you don't have to kind of make the call of whether this is legitimate or not. So instead of going straight to Google anytime you have a research project, I really encourage you to just that small mind shift of going to the library's website, clicking on the electronic databases button, and typing in whatever you're searching for in that window instead of the Google window. And for this paper in particular, all I will accept are scholarly articles. Only two. I'm only asking you to find two different articles that give different interpretations of whatever story, right? You're only writing on one of those five. But I want you to find two different interpretations, hopefully two interpretations that kind of disagree with each other, right? And then you're going to either agree with one and explain why the other is less interesting or less effective, or to come up with a whole new position and explain why both of those might have their valid points, but you actually have a better way of understanding the story. So what's not acceptable is the easy stuff that you might have used in high school classes. I don't know. Wikipedia, no. Any encyclopedia articles, no. No Cliff Notes, no Spark Notes, no Schmoop, no Grade Saver, no Lit Charts, although I like Lit Charts' website just to get a background information, but not as a source in a scholarly an academic essay for a class. Not Course Hero, not anybody's personal blogs, and no sites that want to sell you college papers, right? So no like buymyaPlusPaper.com. None of that stuff, right? That's going to be immediately problematic if you try to pass that off as legitimate scholarly sources, because they ain't. So don't even waste your time or my time, right? Because I'm just going to say, nah, go back to the databases and find, don't bring Schmoop up in here. Find the real sources. It's not that hard. I promise you. I picked these 5 stories because I know for a fact and from past papers that there's tons of scholarship. There's tons of academic articles that have been written about these 5. They're super famous. People have had a lot to say about them. So that won't be a challenge other than just going through and finding 2 of the many, many articles that you'll find that are interesting to you and useful to you. And I hopefully the information in this week's folder will kind of guide you through that step by step. If you haven't used the NC Live database before, this little tutorial I included should help kind of literally just kind of guide you through it. And I think the quicker you can start using that in classes like this one, the better. Because it really is, once you get used to just where you have to put stuff in, what to navigate and what buttons to hit, it's super easy and it's such a time saver. So I encourage you to do that. What I'm asking you to turn in is 2 things. About the middle of the week, I'm asking you to basically just give me information on the 2 articles that you have found. That's all. Just the author and title. I mean, if you're using the databases, you can go ahead and generate a citation, right? There's a little button up in the screen. I think it's usually the right-hand side up in the top corner, a little window that says citation. You can hit that button. Make sure you're doing an MLA citation format. A lot of times the default setting for those citation generators are APA format. We'll use that in our second paper, but on the first paper, and really almost every paper you ever write for an English class, it's going to be MLA, Modern Language Association format, in the most recent edition. So make sure if you're using the citation generator, to just go ahead and do that, copy it, paste it into a document that you can use both for this, the homework, the discussion this week, and then also you can use it for your works cited page when you're putting your paper together. The other homework I'm asking you to do is a little bit more time consuming, and that's to actually read through the 2 articles and write up a summary. So most of the last part of this week's folder is just kind of walking you through how to do a summary. And it doesn't have to be anything. These are going to be like paragraph summaries. So basically you're taking all the information in that scholarly article and reducing it down to its most essential points. And that's the summary. If you got any questions about like what a summary is and what you should or shouldn't do in it, just ask. Just shoot me an email and we can clear that up. But I think it's pretty, the information in the folder is pretty clear on that. That's all I'm asking you to do, it's a lot, but this is an important week because this is where you're really starting to put your paper together. Basically, the writing that you do this week will be some of the body paragraphs of your paper that you'll be working on for these next few weeks. So again, it's important to make the right choices in terms of the story and in terms of your interpretation of the story and in terms of the articles that you're working with. So you're having to make a lot of choices this week. Again, ask if you just need a little more guidance or you just want to double check, see if you're headed in the right direction. Basically, that's what I'll be doing with my feedback that I give you on your assignments over these next few weeks. But if you just need some more, double checking is never a bad thing. Go ahead and we can sit down and talk. I'd love to chat with you guys online. That'd be awesome. Okay, I think that's it. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. Good luck this week. Work hard. Maybe even harder than you want to, but look, this is the time of the semester where the pace is probably going to pick up in this class and any other class you're taking. But you got this. So work hard, be kind. I'll see you back here soon.